This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, good morning, Rabbi Sai. Welcome everyone to the Kollel Igor de Pirka here in Kew Garden Hills, New York. And as difficult as it is to get here this morning, with all the airports in the neighborhood, flooded, and traffic on all the major highways and byways, but it must be a good shiur if the Yetzer Hara was trying to interfere. Let's begin with what we say in Zmiros Motzei Shabbos, in the Pizmain, Hamavdil Bein Kodesh L'Chol. We say, Nach Neviyadcha Kachoimer. We are in your hands, Kachoimer, like mortar. Slachna al Kavachoimer. Yom liyom yabiya oimer, v'layla l'layla. Slachna, forgive please, al kal v'choimer. Literally, kal v'choimer means, forgive us for kal v'choimer. Kal v'choimer is one of the Yud Gimel Midos, Shatar Nidrashas Behem, one of the 13 hermeneutical principles of exegesis, as they say. One of the Yud Gimel Midos, Shatar Nidrashas Behem. But what does it mean, slachna al kal v'chomer? Forgive us for the kal v'chomer. For what kal v'chomer do we need to be forgiven for? What kal v'chomer did we violate? So some translate, slachna, forgive al kal, for the lenient averos, v'chomer, and the stringent averos. But we know typically the expression kal v'chomer refers to one of the Yud Gimel Midos Shatar Nidrashas Behem. Right? If, let's say, kesef, chuppah, which is not koineh, we can make a kal v'chomer. If kesef, which is koineh, if chuppah, which is goimer, is not koineh, or if kesef, which is koineh, not goimer, chuppah, which is goimer, certainly it should be koineh. That's an example of a kal v'chomer. So, what does it mean? Slachna kal v'chomer, forgive us for the kal v'chomer. What kal v'chomer are we looking for forgiveness for? So there's a very interesting Zohar HaKadosh, which is quoted by Rabbi Aaron Kotler in the Mishnahs Rabbi Aaron, who actually, he's quoting Rabbi Yeshuah Leib Diskin, who quoted the Zohar. The Zohar says like this, on the Pasuk, Vayimaru es chayehem ba'avodah kasha. They embittered our lives with strenuous labor, with difficult labor, b'choimer, with mortar, uvolveinim, and with bricks. Says the Zohar HaKadosh, what does it mean ba'avodah kasha? Avodah kasha refers to kasha, questions. B'choimer, what does it mean they enslaved us with choimer? Kal v'choimer. Ubolveinim, that's libon halacha. Very interesting Zohar. That it doesn't mean literally, vayimaros chayim ba'avodah kasha, it doesn't mean hard work. It means with kashas. And choimer refers to kal v'choimer. And leveinim refers to libon halacha. What is the meaning of the Zohar HaKadosh that this pasuk is understood allegorically? Vayimaru es chayim ba'avodah kasha refers to kashas. Must be, the Zohar is saying, that the reason why we were enslaved by avodah kasha is because somehow a failure of kasha, and choimer is a failure of kal v'chomer, and leveinim is a failure in libon halacha. What is the meaning of this comment of the Zohar HaKadosh? There's an interesting Medrash Pliya. The Medrash Pliya, we know Medrash Pliya, these are sort of astounding, perplexing, inexplicable Midrashim. And the Medrash says on the Pasuk, Hayam ra vayanos, the sea saw and it split. Ma ra hayam vayanos, what did the sea see that it split, right? It says the sea saw, what did the sea see? Says the Medrash, Braisa de Rabbi Shmuel ra. It saw the Braisa of Rabbi Shmuel. So what got the sea to split? The Braisa of Rabbi Shmuel. Okay, very nice. Why in the world would anybody show a sea, a Braisa Rabbi Shmuel, and why would that inspire the sea to split? What exactly is there in the Braisa of Rabbi Shmuel that elicited the split of the sea? We know every morning we say the Braisa of Rabbi Shmuel Omer, B'shalish esrei midos haTorah nidrashes, Kal v'chomer, Gzeira shava, Binyanav mikasav echad, Binyan shnei ksuvim, Klal uprat, prat uklal, Klal prat. Fine. And finally we say, Davar halom enyo davar halom esefai, V'kan, some say, Shnei ksuvim hamachishim zeh. These are the Yud Gimel Midos Shehatayra, what am I missing back there? Good stuff? What Yud Gimel Midos Shehatayra Nidrashes Bahem? Well, what should really stir our curiosity is why in the world do we recite the Yud Gimel Midos Shehatayra Nidrashes Bahem before davening? What in the world do they have to do with davening? I would say before a Gemara Shiur, you should start off the Gemara Shiur. Well, you're about to utilize these principles, so you should say the table of contents. You should recite the order of operations. But why in the world begin davening with Yud Gimel Midos Shehatayra Nidrashes? It has absolutely nothing to do with tefillah. We're not going to be using any of the Yud Gimel Midos Shehatayra Nidrashes. Why is that the introduction to tefillah? Okay, coming on to this week's Parsha, Parshas Va'era. Vayedaber Moshe lefnei Hashem le'mor hein bnei Yisrael lo shamu elai v'yech yishmeini faroi va'ani. You're with me today? Aral Sefasayim. Yeah, you had good sleep last night? Everyone's in a good mood today? Va'ani Aral Sefasayim. This is what Moshe Rabbeinu comes to Hashem. He says, hein bnei Yisrael lo shamu elai. The Jewish people didn't listen to me. So how do you expect Paroi to listen to me? I'm Vani Aral Sefasayim. My lips are clogged up. What is Moshe Rabbeinu doing? What is this argument called? What is this method termed? Hein b'nei Yisrael lo shamu elai v'yech yishmeini paroi. If the b'nei Yisrael, the b'nei Yisrael are not listening to me, how do you expect Paroi to listen to me? And he says, Rashi, what do we call this? Zeh echad me'asara kavachomer shebetorah. This is one of the 10 fortiori arguments in the Torah, right? This is one of the 10 kavachomers in the Torah. And the question is, okay, this is one, Moshe Rabbeinu has better things to worry about than arguing lamda shekavachomers to Paroi or to the Ribono Shel Olam. Fine, this is one of the top 10 kavachomers in the Torah. Why is it here? What is it doing at this juncture? Why is Moshe Rabbeinu learning dinei kavachomer? He's trying to get us out of Mitzrayim. What's he getting bogged down with a kavachomer? Now's not the time. The main mesachta of kavachomer, I think, is Kedushin. The Atzmos Yosef wrote a commentary on Kedushin because he writes, Mesachta Kedushin has a very if you want to understand your Gimel Midos Shehatayra Nidrashes Bahem, it's found in the first two prakim of Kedushin. But this is not Masechta Kedushin here. Moshe Rabbeinu is trying to get us out. Why is he arguing kavachomers to the Ribono Shel Olam? To the point where the Rashi brings down from Chazal, this is one of the 10 kavachomers in the Torah. Now, there is a problem with this kavachomer. What's the problem with this kavachomer? There's a pircha in the kavachomer. Right? Everybody knows what a kavachomer is. If this little kid who's 4 feet tall, weighs 50 pounds, could hit the baseball 50 feet, then certainly this chayara, who's 6'5", 300 pounds, on steroids that are usually only for racehorses, certainly he could hit the ball 50 feet, right? But the thing is, you could ask a pircha on the kavachomer. But if the kid has a metal bat and the big baseball player is holding a toothpick, you could say, it's not a raya just because the kid can hit 50 feet, but the variables in the laboratory are not the same because the kid has a big bat and the baseball player hardly has anything. So there's a problem on this kavachomer. There's a pircha on the kavachomer. What's the pircha on the kavachomer? The pasuk. The pasuk says, "V'lo shamu el Moshe mikaitzer ruach u'me'avodah kasha." That the reason really Bnei Yisrael would want to listen to Moshe. But there was a problem. They couldn't listen to Moshe. They were so overworked. They had so little zest and spirit in life. The words couldn't enter their ears. But Paroi was not subject to Koitza Ruach. Paroi was not subject to Avodah Kasha. Maybe he would listen to Moshe Rabbeinu. In other words, if this is going to be a kavachomer, this is a classic bad kavachomer. There's a pircha on the kavachomer. Klal Yisrael didn't listen to Koitza Ruach Avodah Kasha, but that is not something that Paroi would suffer from. So the Maharal in the Gur Aryeh says a very interesting idea. Maharal says that a pircha is only a question on a typical kavachomer. For instance, the following. You want to say like this. If in a lenient case, if something lenient that can't do A, could do B, something strict that could do A is certainly could do B. So we'll ask a pircha, yeah, but A could do this tiny little thing that B can't do. So what does that mean? Yeah, but still, overwhelmingly, all things being equal, B is much more able than A is. So if B is much more able than A, then if A could do it, B should be able to do it. So what? A could do one tiny thing that B can't do. But in general, B is more chomer than A? No. The logic of the pircha is, we don't know how the laws of the Torah work. And it could be the same way A could do X, maybe because it could do X, it could do the other thing. But B that can't do that X, even though you're right, in general, B is more able than A, but it can't do X, so maybe it can't do that thing you're trying to learn. But Moshe Rabbeinu is just trying to present a logical argument to God. And the logical argument to God is, V'anisham, who's more likely to listen to me? B'nai Yisrael or Parai? Of course B'nai Yisrael. For B'nai Yisrael, it's for their benefit. They're going to be leaving Mitzrayim. They want to leave Mitzrayim. Parai doesn't want them to leave. You're right, there's a small little reason why the B'nai Yisrael didn't listen. It's because Mikotza Ruach. But let's weigh the two things. They're not listening Mikotza Ruach, but that should be far outweighed by the desire to listen because it's going to mean going free. Now, even though in a typical Kavachomer, once you show one strength of the Lamed, of the Malamed, then that destroys the Kavachomer. But here, it's not trying to learn Al Dinei Torah, it's just an argument. So overall, what's more compelling? The desire to listen because it's good for them, or their non-ability to listen because they're so overworked? Overwhelmingly, the more compelling svara is they should want to listen because it's good for them. And therefore, if they didn't, certainly Parai will not listen to me. But again, what we see from all of this is legitimately one of the 10 examples of Kavachomer in the Torah. What in the world is a Kavachomer doing at this juncture? This is not a lamdish topic here. We're being enslaved. Hashem wants Moshe to take us out. So all of a sudden, Moshe is given the job, take us out. So Moshe is darshaning Kavachomer. Moshe is giving a pilpul shir. Hashem says, Moshe, take them out! So Moshe says, 1 second. Now it's time for a pilpul shir. What's Moshe giving a pilpul shir? Get him out of Mitzrayim. So, this idea that we're going to learn today is formulated in the Sefer Mishnas Rabbi Aaron, from Rav Aaron Kotler, and he quotes this idea from Rabbi Shiur Leib Diskin. Shiur Leib Diskin, one of the great Gaonim, the 19th century. He lived from 1817 to 1898, Limis Param. So I hope, Bez Hashem, in about 2 weeks, hopefully to go to Eretz Yisrael. We're going to be in Har HaZeisim. Rabbi Shiur Leib Diskin is buried on Har HaZeisim in Chalkas Rabbanim. Rabbi Shiur Leib Diskin was such a Gaon, legend had it that he could look at a tree and say how many leaves were on the tree without counting. Meaning he had the formula. He understood the way trees grow, and he could take the tree, look at it, and tell you right away how many leaves were on the tree. Okay, Marva Aboisai, the Gemara tells us, says Rabbi Shiur Leib Diskin, in Masechta Sanhedrin, Sadi Tes Amud Beis, Adam la'amal nivra. Man was created to toil. Which, that's a pasuk in Eoiv, Parakeh, pasuk Zayin. Off the bat, it's an eye-opener. Man was created to toil. Let's think about that. Man was created to toil? Really? I thought the objective of life is, take it easy. Kick back, lie back in a hammock, drink lemonade, and, try to relax and enjoy as much as possible. No. The Gemara is quoting a pasuk that says man was created to toil, to work, to sweat, to be yageya, to be amel. Like the pasuk says, Adam la'amal yulad. And then the Gemara continues. What was a person created to toil in? To toil in work or to toil with their mouth? The Gemara says there's another pasuk, ki akaf alav piyu, to toil with their mouth. Then the Gemara says, what kind of toil with the mouth? This kind of that. And the Gemara says, to toil in Torah. Shenemar, la yomush sefer ha-Torah hazeh mipicha. This is what it means. Adam la'amal Torah hu nivra. Man was created to toil in Torah. Okay. Rabbi Shiur Leib Diskin expands on the idea. There's a Mishnah in Pirkei Avos, Paragimel, Mishnah Hey. Rabbi Nechunya ben Hakana Omer. Kol hamakabel olav al Torah, mavir menu al malchus v'al derech eretz. Anyone who accepts upon themselves the yoke of Torah, They remove from upon him the yoke of government, the yoke of livelihood. Really? Is that true? What does that mean? Somebody who learns Torah doesn't have to work, doesn't have to make a living? I mean, so how do you pay the bills? But if you cast off the yoke of Torah, they hurl on you the yoke of government and the yoke of derech eretz. What does this mean? Why is that so? I mean, either you got to work, you don't got to work. What does accepting upon oneself the yoke of Torah have to do with it? Explains Rabbi Yeshuah Leib Diskin the following concept. And the concept is, there is a certain quota in this world. What is the quota? Every human being has a quota of, let's call it toil, sweat, hard work, stress, problems, aggravation, difficulty. There is a concept that on the shoulders of every human being devolves problem, stress, aggravation, difficulty. What is the function in life? What is the objective of life? The objective of life is, of course, problems are great, difficulties are great, challenges are great, stress is great. You know why? Because we were created to toil, to sweat in Torah. To have difficulty in Torah. Yes, to have aggravation and stress in Torah. What's the pasuk saying? I don't understand. I'm tired, but I'm going to come out to a shiur in sub-freezing weather. That's a stress. That's a difficulty. That's a challenge. That's not easy. I'm very tired, but I'm going to strain myself to understand, to listen, to focus, to learn. I don't understand the Gemara. It's very difficult. Let me just go to sleep. No, let me try again. Let me try to understand. What does it say over here? Let me ask my friend. Let me ask my Rabbi. Let me ask my chavrusa. There is a certain degree of stress, a quota of stress that rests on everybody's shoulders. It could either be fulfilled through learning, and if not, then Rabbi Shem says you'll fulfill it other ways. You'll have other difficulties, you have other problems, you have other aggravation, you'll have other stress. Adam la'amal yulad. Man was created to toil. What type of toil? Torah. If you don't toil in Torah, then they throw on you al malchus and al derech eretz. It means as follows. Nobody's going to exempt themselves from olam hazeh. Person has to work, has to make a living, and there are things that every human being has to take care of. But Rabbi said there's work and there's work. There's 9 to 5 work, where you work, and then you could come home and be a human being. And then there are people who are mamish avodim l'paroi b'mitzrayim every day of their lives. They wake up earlier than they would like to, and they go to sleep well later than they like to, and they have a taskmaster, and they have a boss who beats the living daylights out of them physically, emotionally. There are people who work, and there are people who work. There are people who have a job, and that's the idea, and that's the goal. And there are people who are mamish avodim, that they have no life at all. And that's good, because Adam la'amal yulad, man was created to toil. The only thing is, they've challenged that into the wrong venue. Of course, you got to work, but why fulfill the aggravation, stress, and difficulty in something that bears no results? Because the living you'll make anyway, as long as you do hishtadlus. So now, in terms of the aggravation, stress, and difficulty, you might as well gain that in avodas Hashem, which actually you get schar for, and we're going to see doesn't take away from your health and your life. Because after all, everybody knows, the first thing you go to the doctor, so do they know exactly what causes what? Who knows? They do know, they don't know, they're guessing, it's educated guess. So you go down, no, the heart's not good, so what do they ask you? Are you stressed out? Right? Are you stressed out? Because everybody knows stress, weakens the heart. But we're going to learn something very interesting. Stress in avodas Hashem, it's real stress. It's not fake stress. It's real stress. It's pressure. If a person says, I have to learn X amount of time a day, X amount of material a day, I have to get up on time, there's man tefillah, man kriya shema, halacha, dikdukim, it's stress. Says Rabbeinu Yoina, miraculously it doesn't shorten one's life, it lengthens one's life. Not all stress is bad. People that can say, no, it's too stressful for you on your health. Not all stress is bad. Certain stress actually is good for you. It's healthy stress. Says Rabbi Yeshuah Leib Diskin, difficulties in life could be averted. Really? Yeah, the title of this shiur is How to Make Your Life Easier. Okay, so raise your hand. You don't have rhetorical question. Raise your hand if you'd like life to be easier. That's what this shiur is about. How do you make life easier? Says Rabbi Yeshuah Leib Diskin. Look at number 10. Rabbi Aaron Koller quotes Rabbi Yeshuah Leib B'Shem Maharal Diskin Amru. We find in the Zohar, Vayamaru es chayehem ba'avodah kasha b'chaymer uvolvenim. Avodah kasha, like we quoted earlier, is kashas. Chaymer is kal v'chaymer. Levenim is halacha. What in the world does the Zohar mean? What does the Zohar mean? Avodah kasha is kashas, chaymer is kal v'chaymer, levenim is Leib and halacha. Rabbi Yeshuah Leib Diskin explained that the intention of the Zohar is somehow, because the Jewish people were lax and deficient in being engaged in kashas, in learning kavachaymers, in clarifying halacha, that is why they had to work in Mitzrayim. Say, come on, what do you mean? There's no Torah yet. But still, the Gemara tells us, Avram Avinu is a zakein v'yoshev v'yeshiva. The Midrashim tell us they had Megillos that they were oisek in. There was some form of Talmud Torah even before the Torah was formally given. That's what they were oisek in. That's what they were involved in. That's what they engaged in. And somehow the Jewish people, and during this era, were lax. They were deficient in this. They were deficient in asking kashas, so they had avodah kasha. They were deficient in learning kal v'chaymer, so they had b'chaymer u'vovenim. They were deficient in libo and halacha. They had b'chaymer u'vovenim. Says Rabbi Yeshuah Leib Diskin, there is a quota that rests on every person. How much difficulties they will have in life. The Chacham Ein of Bereishai says, when the day is over, what do I need stress at home for? What do I need all kinds of difficulties? I'm going to go to the Beis Medrash. I'm going to open up the Gemara. I'm going to try to understand the Kavachaymer's Gzeres Shavas. But it's hard, it's difficult. I have to pull my eyes open and I'm so tired and I just want to go home and rest. Okay, no problem. You can do whatever you want to do. You just have to realize that whatever challenge that you don't want to face in the Beis HaMedrash, you're going to face somewhere. So you might as well experience it in a derech, in a way where, first of all, we'll see it's marech yamav, where it removes other problems in life and you actually get paid for it, you get schar for it. That's the idea. And therefore, says Rabbi Yeshuah Leib Diskin, because Klal Yisrael somehow were deficient in this, they were punished by avodah kasha, b'chaymer, uvolvenim. Says Rabbi Yeshuah Leib Diskin, I'm not making this up. This is what the Zohar says. Avodah kasha, zeh kasha. Chaymer, zeh kal v'chaymer. Levenim, zehu liben halacha. That's what it means. Everybody has on their neck a yoke. You find me a person in this world that doesn't have a yoke on their neck, that doesn't have big issues, big things that they're dealing with. But you get to pick. You get to pick what you want to deal with. You want to accept upon yourself the yoke of Torah. It removes from your shoulders other problems. You don't want to accept the yoke of Torah? No problem. It's not nice to say, but pick your poison. It's not poison. You're going to have a sam. You're going to have a sam. Either a sam chayim or chas v'shalom, the other way around. Says, I found... Why dafka kal v'chaymer?
Because it fits into the chaymer levenim. Kosher fits into kosher.
No, that's not why.
Why that one over the other two?
Why were those the ones that they didn't learn? Right, because
they learned the other one.
You mean you want to know? Did they learn Gzeres Shavas?
Is that what it's saying?
Could be. It's a code word. I mean, that's the first one. They didn't learn Brisa Rabbi Shmuel. You wanted to go through all 13. Maybe it's just a way of saying Yud Gimel Midas. I'm not sure. Right. In other words, why that one?
This is great for individual, but not great for the total.
What do you mean the total?
If everybody will sit and learn, nobody will learn.
No, again, I'm not. I try to be clear. This is not talking about learning all day as opposed to taking a job. I thought it was pretty clear about that. I'm talking about in no way am I indicating that a person should not work a job, but there's work and there's work. You could work 9 to 5, and you could have some freedom to be able to devote time to learning, or a person could be completely immersed in their work that it doesn't afford them opportunity to be involved in learning at all. So I'm not here to.
The higher you go, more hours you work. So this is what you're telling. What you're saying, a person should not have any initiative.
Ambition? You're saying am I saying a person should not have ambition to climb to the top?
Yes. That's what you're saying.
Look, I'm not saying exactly how. I'm not here to legislate how many hours a person should work, but it could be that if climbing to the top means to be, in other words, it could be if being a partner somewhere means that you have to sleep in your office, then maybe you should be machal zayin reaching that level. Maybe it's better, so don't be a partner. Maybe, if we're mamin, that once a person does hamar be'loimamet, right? Person has emunah, I'm doing legitimate hishtadlus, I can make $30,000 more. Okay, I'm going to be moichel the extra 30, and this year I won't have any chesroinos. I won't have any extra expenses. Look, says the Sefer Oitzer Satoira, that's exactly why Shevet Levi did not have to work in Mitzrayim. Because we know the Messiah is that Shevet Levi, Yoru Mishpatecha Liyakoi, V'Sarascha L'Yisrael, Shevet Levi was always immersed in Talmud Torah. So they didn't have to have this oil. The oil was removed, or was never placed on them in the first place. Take a look in Rabbeinu Yonah. Rabbeinu Yonah writes on Perkei Avos in Parak Beis Mishnah Zayin. The Mishnah says, Marbe Torah, Marbe Chaim. One who increases their learning will increase life. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, okay, Ma Shmita Eitzel Har Sinai. What does this got to do with anything? Says Rabbeinu Yonah, Zeh hadavar k'neged ma she'amar marbe basar, marbe rima. We said earlier, the more meat you eat, the more worms we'll have to eat. Meaning, the more you eat, it shortens one's life. But al yidei amelos v'Torah, it lengthens one's life. This also, says Rabbi Yonah, corresponds to marbe nechas and marbe daiga. The more possessions you have, the more you have to worry about. Says Rabbi Yonah, everybody knows, the more things you have, the more problems you have. Should I get another car? Yeah, you might think it's going to make your life easier, but that means, 4 more oil changes a year, an extra inspection a year, an extra registration a year, more things to worry about. So says Rabbeinu Yonah, marbe nechasim marbe daiga. Says Rabbeinu Yonah, that means nechasim mekatzrois shenoisav shel adam. Property, possessions shorten one's life. But v'dagas haTorah, stress in learning, av kihi daiga gedola. It's a big worry. It's a big stress. It's not a small thing. Stress in avodas Hashem is a real stress. Lamavin. What's the stress? To understand something in an orderly way, to be able to explain it clearly, to be able to comprehend it properly. Ein yichayles l'daiga hahi lasos lo yira. That worry cannot harm a person. Afal pisha amru chachmei hateva. Even though all the naturalists say hayagoin chayli halev. Worry is the illness of the heart. The hadaiga and stress, he kalois halev, destroys the heart. Ach doyeg b'Torah orach yamim u'shnais chayim v'shalom yosifu lai. If a person has stress, I have to learn this amount, I have to get up at this time, I have to make sure I do this right, and it's stressful. The human reaction, the emotional reaction, could be exactly the same as a stress in the physical world, but the stress in avodas Hashem is marech yamav shalada. Okay, let's expand on this just a bit more. We explained from the Gemara in Sanhedrin, Adam la'amal yilad. Man was created to toil. Comes the Ben Ish Chai in Shemais, in Shana Bet. Ben Ish Chai, so it's interesting, so I mentioned, so I hope to be in Har HaZeisim, so I was looking into, which Gedolim are buried on Har HaZeisim. So I saw, who's buried on Har HaZeisim? The Ben Ish Chai. Ben Ish Chai is buried on Har HaZeisim. I think, what? How in the world is Ben Ish Chai buried in Har HaZeisim? He, first of all, he lived in Bavel, right? He's Chacham Chaim Mi Bavel. And I thought he was Nifter in Baghdad. And I thought I saw pictures of his kever in Baghdad. So, but no, I found a picture of the kever of the Ben Ish Chai in Har HaZeisim. But then I found a picture of the kever of the Ben Ish Chai in Baghdad. So now I'm really confused. Because there's one thing you can only happen one time, is you can only be buried, you can only die once, you can only be buried once. But how does he have kvarim in both places? So I'm looking around. All kinds of stories. What happened? He was Avada, he passed away in a city in Babylon, in Iraq. He's buried in Baghdad. And then 40 years later, they were building a highway there, and they had to exhume his body. And supposedly the Arab who took out the body, he became paralyzed until he went to the Chachamim. How he got to the Chachamim after he was paralyzed, I guess he wasn't fully paralyzed. And they told him this is Chacham Rabbi Yosef Chaim, and he was restored as long as they had to say prayers for him, and they moved him a little bit. But then the story goes that days before the Ben Ish Chai was niftar, somebody in Eretz Yisrael had a dream of the impending Misa of the Ben Ish Chai. And in his dream, they saw that they brought his body to burial in Har HaZeisim. And he never told the story to anybody. Until 1948, when Jordan invaded Jerusalem, so this Chacham was afraid he would die, he would be killed. So he let on the secret that he had this dream 40 years earlier, that the Ben Ish Chai was moved to Har HaZeisim. And there's this legend that the Ben Ish Chai, even though people didn't see it, was in fact buried on Har HaZeisim. I mean, it's hard. It's a hard story because there were supposedly tens of thousands of people at the Levaya and Kvura of the Ben Ish Chai. And what happened? He was really taken to Har HaZeisim. But the truth is, the Mekubalim in Yerushalayim, Rav Mordechai Eliyahu, and Rav Kaduri, they say, no, the Ben Ish Chai is buried on Har HaZeisim. So you have today 2 kvarim for the Ben Ish Chai. You have the kever in Baghdad, and you have the kever on Har HaZeisim. And there's a question, is his body on Har HaZeisim? Is his neshama on Har HaZeisim? So I'll let you look into that one. That is...
Where are you going then? So
Am I going to Baghdad? I hope not. So, by the way, they recently published a sefer from the Ben Ish Chai. It's called Birchas Hareach. Hareach stands for Harav Yosef Chaim. Where did they get these ksavim from? They found it in Iraq. Where in Iraq? In an Iraqi intelligence building that was flooded. And then when the American army came in, they go in there. They see the flooded building. They see on the floor there's like a pile of manuscripts. They pick it up. Ksavim of the Ben Ish Chai in the Iraqi intelligence agency. They paid, some agency paid to restore these ksavim, and they published 2 tremendous volumes, Chidushim of the Ben Ish Chai. Okay, so the Ben Ish Chai says as follows: Adam la'amo yulad. Man was created to toil. All man, Umay Sa'ilam, Klal Yisrael, all mankind was created to toil, and not only to toil, to construct and to build. The difference is the Umay Sa'ilam build physical buildings, and Klal Yisrael builds binyane ruchani, spiritual compounds. Like the pasuk says in Yeshaya, V'chol banayach limudei Hashem al tikri banayach ela boy noyach. That is the function of a Jew. To build through limud HaTorah, they build olamos, build binyanim ruchaniyim. Says the Ben Ish Chai, this is the meaning of the pasuk. HaKoil koil Yaakov, v'hayodayim yedei Esav. Esav is boina al yedei hayodayim shaloi, and Yaakov is boina through the koil Yaakov. Through the koil Yaakov, that is what we build. Comes Paroi, who knew the whole Torah of today's Shiur, and he knew the Ben Ish Chai. Says Paroi, wait a second, but the Torah was not given yet. The Torah is not given yet. And Adam la'amo yulad, man was created to toil, but not just to toil, to build. Let's go, Jews, get busy. Build me the pyramids, build the Sphinx, build all those tremendous binyanim in Mitzrayim. After all, you're not fulfilling your tachlis. So long as you have a Torah, that's very nice, you can learn Torah and you can build. But right now you don't have a Torah yet. You don't have a Torah, you need to build. That was the argument of Paroi. Says Ben Ish Chai, this is what Paroi says to Moshe. He says, Hein rabim ata am haaretz. Hein rabim ata am haaretz. You know what you guys are right now? You're am haaretz. You don't have Torah, you don't have Torah, you got to build pyramids. Very, very nice. Soon you're going to go get the Torah, then I'll exempt you from building. But now you got to build. You're going to cause them to be lax on their building. That was the argument of Paroi. Pretty sharp fellow, this Paroi, right? But says the Ben Ish Chai, that is the function of a Jew. V'chol banayich limudei Hashem. So perhaps we could suggest then When we say in this Mirois, Matzai Shabbos, Slachna al Kavachomer, it doesn't just have a meaning, forgive us for the lenient and for the strict, but literally, forgive us for Kavachomer. Because the biggest indictment on a person is Kavata itim la Torah, Palpalta b'chachma, Hevanta davar mitoch davar. Do we use our time wisely? Are we kaveh itim la Torah? That is the primary indictment against the person. So we say, Ribono shel Olam, we're only a basar v'dam. Nachnu biyadcha kachomer. Please forgive us on that which rests on our shoulders, that which we are liable for. Please forgive us. Slachna al kavachomer. If the reason we had to go down to Mitzrayim, Rabbi say, is because we were lax in the Kavachomer, that means we can only be redeemed if we are mechazik ourselves in that inyan. And therefore, when the Ribono Shel Olam charges Moshe Rabbeinu, Moshe, get these guys out of here, take them out. So Moshe says, all right, here's how the job begins. Hein b'nei Yisrael shamu elai, v'yech yishmaini paroi v'ani aral sfasayim. If I'm going to take them out, and the reason they're here in the first place is because they were lax in the Chomer of Ovenim, learning Dinei Kavachomer. Moshe Rabbeinu says, let's introduce the limud of Kavachomer. This is the first Kavachomer that appears for Klal Yisrael as an Am, as a nation in Mitzrayim. As soon as Moshe is charged with the mission of taking them out, Moshe Rabbeinu begins to address the problem of Hein b'nei Yisrael lo shamu elai ve'ech yishma'ini paroi ze'echad me'asara kavachomer shabatayra. And therefore the Yam did not want to split. The Yam would not split. The Yam said, well, what do you mean split? You guys belong in Mitzrayim. You are lax in kavachomer. So Moshe said, no, take a look. You see the Bryce of Rabbi Shmuel? You see? Kavachomer, this is what we're headed out for. We are leaving Mitzrayim to exchange the avodah kasha of building the pyramids to the avodah, the adam la'amo yulad of avodas haTorah. That is why the Yam did not split until it saw Brisa de Rabbi Yishmael. And that is the way Moshe Rabbeinu was matzil Klal Yisrael. Avehein b'nei Yisrael lo shamu elai ve'ech yishma'ini parei. Mar Rabbi say, let me share with you one added point here. Mamish, this is Oyom v'Noira. This is really an astounding thing. Let's see if I can find it. With a story to boot. Okay. If you look in the end of Parshas Behaloischa, so we have the story, Miriam spoke Lashon Hara about Moshe, and Miriam is punished, she's stricken with tsaras, and Moshe Rabbeinu cries out to Hashem, Kel na, Rifan nala. Of all the names of Hashem, Moshe Rabbeinu invokes which name? Kel. And right after that in the Torah, you have what? Aviha yaroik yarak b'faneha haloisi kalam shavas yamim tikale Miriam shavas yamim. If her father would have spit in her face, she would be embarrassed for 7 days. Let Miriam be embarrassed for 7 days. Says Rashi, say Chazal, this is a kavachomer, right? Ve'aviha yarak yarak. If her father would spit at her, she would have to be embarrassed 7 days. Alachas kam v'kam. If I'm unhappy with her, Miriam should be locked up for 7 days. Why is Ribono Shel Olam telling Moshe Rabbeinu a kal v'chomer here? So comes, and this is Oyom v'Noira, the Bnei Yissaschar, Rav Tzvi Elimelech Shapiro Midinav, quotes Rav Dov Ber, the Magid. And by the way, the Malbim in the Sefer Eretz Chemda at the end of Behaloischa says the exact same idea. This is a fantastic idea, an incredible idea. And that is, we know we have Yud Gimel Midoy Shahatorah Nidreshes Behem, 13 hermeneutical principles. The Yud Gimel Midoy Shahatorah Nidreshes Behem corresponds to Yud Gimel Midoy Harachamim. Each one of Yud Gimel Midoy Shahatorah Nidreshes Behem corresponds to one of the 13 attributes of mercy. Kavachomer, learning Kavachomer. You want to get Rachamim? Learn Kavachomer, learn Gezerah Shava, learn Binyanav. Sometimes a person says, no, Gemara is just intellectual exercise. No. Learning Gemara, learning Yud Gimel Midoy Shahatorah Nidreshes Behem is a way of evoking the Rachamei Shamayim. Evoking Yud Gimel Midoy Shahatorah Nidreshes Behem. Each method evokes a different Midas HaRachamim. So, for instance, Kavachomer would evoke the first of the Yud Gimel Midas HaRachamim. Gezerah Shava, the next. Binyanav, the next. And so on and so forth. Says the Bnei Yissaschar from Rav Doiver, from the Maggid. According to the Arizal has a different count than the Balei HaTosfos. The Balei HaTosfos say that if you want to count Yud Gimel Midos HaRachamim, it goes as follows. Tosfos in Rosh Hashanah, on Tosfos Masechta Rosh Hashanah, says the Yud Gimel Midos HaRachamim is Hashem, Kel, Rachum, V'chanun, Erech HaPayim, V'rav Chesed, V'emes, Noitzah Chesed La'alafim, Noisi Avoin, V'afesha, V'chata, V'nakeh. However, the Arizal has a different count. As Kiyadua, the Arizal does not count Hashem as any of the Yud Gimel Midos HaRachamim, but according to the Arizal, the first of the Yud Gimel Midos HaRachamim is Kel. If you would want to evoke Kel, which method of learning would you have to use? Kavachomer. Kavachomer is the first Yud Gimel Midos Shatar Nidrashis Bahem. That corresponds to Kel in the world of the Arizal. Says the Maggid, says the Malbim, Moshe Rabbeinu cries out, Kel! No! Rafa no la! Rebbeinu Shalom, we want the midah of Kel. Hashem says, you want Kel? So all you need to do is learn the following. V'yaviha yarak yarak b'fanei aloisi kalam shivas yomim. Learn dinei kavachomer. Kavachomer corresponds to Yud Gimel Midos HaRachamim of Kel. You want Kel? Learn kavachomer. That's the Malbim, and that's the Maggid. Maybe we could suggest as follows. Not in the world of the Arizal, in the world of Tosfos. What's the first of the Yud Gimel Midos HaRachamim? Hashem. Right? Tosfos says Hashem. Yud Kei. Yud Kei Vav Kei. So maybe we could say like this. Look in Parshas Va'era. How does Va'era begin? What's the first pasuk in Va'era? Vayedaber Elokim el Moshe Vayomer Elav Ani Hashem. Elokim spoke to Moshe, and he said, I am Hashem. He said basically, good morning, America. Until now, you know me as Elokim. But now I'm going to introduce myself as Yud Kei Vav Kei. I never let that name known to the Avos. They only know me as Kel Shakai. You know me as Elokim until now. They know me as Kel Shakai. But Hashem, Ushmi Hashem, Le'noidati Lahem. But you should know, Moshe, we got to get rolling here. And I'm going to let you know the midah of Yud Kei Vav Kei. Why is Hashem saying, Ani Hashem? Says Arachaim HaKadosh, what is the midah of Ani Hashem? Ani Hashem, what's Yud Kei Vav Kei? Midas harachamim, rachamon ani. I cannot be soivel anymore, the tsar of Klal Yisrael, and therefore I'm going to let them out before their time. Because Hashem was saying to Hashem was saying to Moshe, we're going out early. Moshe says, how are we going to go out early? Hashem says, no, don't worry. You know me as Elokim, they knew me as Kel Shakai, but they never saw my midas harachamim. Now it's rachamim time. Let's get the rachamim going, Hashem says. Whereas the Malbim says, Hashem is also the midah of nisim v'neflois l'mala min hateva. Until now, the world olam k'min hagay noyeg. Now we're moving into a new era in history. Makos, nisim, neflois, dar hamidbar. I'm going to introduce myself as Yud Kei Vav Kei. So now it comes out beautiful. Now the Rebbeinu Shalom is Megala to Moshe. We're going to be dealing with a new Hanhaga. We're going to be dealing with the shame, Yud Kei Vav Kei. So Moshe says, Yud Kei Vav Kei, according to Tosfos. Yud Kei Vav Kei is the first of the Yud Gimel Midos HaRachamim. So Moshe says, I know how the game works. The game works if we want to evoke Yud Kei Vav Kei. So Moshe Rabbeinu says, perfect. Hein b'nei Yisrael lo shamu elai, v'yech yishmeini paroi v'ani aras v'asayim. Now the only way to do that, we got to learn Dinei Kal v'chomer. According to the Ari, Kel is connected to Kal v'chomer. According to the Balei HaTosfos, Yud Kei Vav Kei is connected to Kal v'chomer. Hashem says, I'm going to introduce a new midah. What's the midah? Yud Kei Vav Kei. Moshe says, perfect. Okay, let me look at my chart. Let me end up with a story. Going back to the Arizal system and the Bnei Yissaschar system, that when Moshe davened, Kel na, Hashem said, in order to evoke Kel, you need to learn Dinei Kal v'chomer. There's a beautiful sefer, it's called Shalas Etshuvos Mekadshe Hashem. I think it was written by Reb Tzvi Hirsch Meisel's, one of the great Rabbanim who went through the Holocaust. And there are shilas there that are indescribable. Halachic queries that people ask during those dark days. And in the introduction, he brings down the account of how he survived and his suffering. And he brings an incredible thing. That he was on a cattle car. He was on one of these death cars. No food. They were, a hair's breadth from the next world. And there was a turning point that at that point in time, he felt that the salvation was coming. When was that? He said they had nothing to eat, nothing to drink. Their bodies were broken down. They had no strength left. What are they going to do? And they saw in the field herbs growing, grass growing. And they took that grass, and he says, as is well known, herbs have certain medicinal powers. They took that grass, and the grass sustained them until they were able to get human food. And when he ate the grass, he felt that it was going to bring refuah and Yeshuah kroiva. Yeshuah was coming. Why? What is it about the grass that they felt the Yeshuah was coming? He says, the Gemara says in Chulen, on Daf Samach, that the very first kal v'chomer that was ever utilized was made by the grass. What was the kal v'chomer? Hashem told the trees, Eitz peri, oisa pri, leminai. And Hashem never told the grass to grow leminai. The grass made a kal v'chomer. If trees that anyway grow in one place and they don't intermingle have to be leminai, we just grow everywhere together, certainly we need to be leminai. Says Rav Tzvi Hirsch Meisels, the grass represents hakal v'chomer harishain. And therefore, based on the Bnei Yissaschar, grass represent kal v'chomer and midas hakel, the midas harachamim. When we saw the grass growing and we ate the grass, not only was it injected into us food and nourishment, but we were infused with the rachamei shamayim, and we felt this was the beginning of the Yud Gimel midas harachamim, and that the Yeshua was coming close. And this he writes in his introduction, that when the Jews, under those fateful days, when they ate that grass, they were reminded of this concept that we're learning, that the Yud Gimel Midas Shatar Nidrashis Behem correspond to and evoke Yud Gimel Midas Harachamim. And you would have to think that's why we mention this Brisa as the introduction to Tefillah. Tefillah is Rachamim B'Tachanunim, and the introduction to that is, understand that if you really want to access Rachamei Shamayim, yes, through Tefillah, but ultimately it's through the process, the halachic process. The Esek HaTorah is Ma'orer, the Midas Harachamim, and that is what Moshe Rabbeinu was teaching Klal Yisrael. As the Shibud was starting, as the Goyal Yisrael, Moshe Rabbeinu introduces the Geula through the Kal V'chomer, Hein B'nei Yisrael, Lo Shamu Elai, Ve'ech Yishma'ini Faroi, Ve'ani, Aras V'asayim. Rabbi Say, have a great day. Shkayach.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.